Well, Patrick Cook here. So continuing our Mandelbulb 3D Tutorial Series along the lines of developing a full animation. We'll continue. Now we're at an interesting juncture here in this project. We have finally got to a point where I like the scene. We have a scene here that I feel would make for a very, very interesting animation. We've got plenty of opportunity for shadowing, for a wide perspective, for a vanishing point. We got stuff above us and stuff below us, but yet we have, I believe, minimum risk of clipping, where, you know, the camera is too close to the fractal that it just clips off. So I think there's a bunch of good attributes for this particular scene. The last session I was navigating around and I kind of like what I see. I think we're at a point where we can go back to the lighting and we can tweak the lighting out a little bit more. And then I think we can move on to coloring, although we probably won't get into coloring in this session, but we are real close. So let's do that. Let's get back over to the main. Now I'll tell you what. Before we do this now, let's take my own advice, and I'm going to save this. I had saved it to clipboard as an emergency recovery, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it as an MP3, and I am going to say, let's see, here we go. Okay, well, let's see. I'll tell you what. I'm going to call this 09 end of session. Where are we? Where are we? 32. Okay. So all I'm doing here is I'm just doing a save because I'm going to start moving into lighting. All right, let's get over to the lighting tab. I'm going to close the formula tab here just to make it less cluttered on the screen for you. We don't really need this notepad anymore. I'm going to throw that away. We're on the coloring tab. Now, I'm going to always, the rule of thumb I live by is I always tweak the lighting before the coloring. So I did the lighting early in a couple sessions ago, but I did that so that I could better see the detail within my scene. Now I want to do it with the intention of keeping the lighting. All right, so the first thing I ask myself is the global illumination where I want to be. Now we can really start getting pretty creative now. All right, you know, all these sessions I'm navigating around, I'm playing with the formulas. It seemed like it went on endlessly. And sometimes it does, because you want to get your scene to a point where you can take and run with that before you start committing yourself to lighting and coloring, and then keyframes. You thought that was you thought building the graphic was a lot of work. Wait till you get to the keyframes. You do not want to be going and reverting back and trying to change things when you get out to developing your keyframes. That's why I always say graphic first, and then what do I say? Lighting and coloring, and then your animation. And then, of course, rendering your animation, and then packaging it up as a publishable piece of work. So let's get back to lighting here. So what I often like to do is to ask myself, is that global illumination kind of where I want to be? Well, in this case, we do have a kind of a yellowish, almost a sun-like color to our global illumination, that's probably okay. Let's stay with that for now. The intensity, I can experiment a little bit with this. I mean, look at this. Obviously, this intensity just blows out the detail. I don't want to be there. I don't want the intensity to be so low that I don't see anything. So let's just put it right about, that's too much. That's probably about right. So there's my intensity. Come down here to the light angle. Again now, relative to object. We talked about that in scene and session. My goodness, I think we're talking about that way back in probably around 20. Yeah, 23, 24. All right, so relative to object, I want to get my y angle, and I'm looking to create a bunch of shadows here, but I got some interesting shadows going on down in here, but I tend to really kind of black out over here. Let me try manipulating the X angle. All right, so now the light is like over to the right. All right, I'm sorry, over to the left, shining in. To the left, shining this way. Okay. All right, let's go with that. All right, now object. So your specular light. All right, now I'm going to tweak this all the way up here. Now look at this. Look at this. Focus on this part right here with my specular adjustment all the way up. I have the light is more intense in this particular portion of the graphic. Now, watch right here. I'm going to take my specular and move it all the way down. You see, I get to a point where there's just no light that's being reflected off. All right. So specular is basically where the light will hit the surface, the object, and reflect off at 90 degrees. All right. You don't want too much specular. You don't want too little. That's too much. That's too little, because what happens is it kind of dulls out your scene. You want to get something in there, something like this. Watch this part right here. All right. Now my diffuse light, I don't want too much because I start to lose detail. I don't want too little because I lose detail. I want to get it somewhere in that area there. I'm looking for shadows. I'm looking for the, kind of watching this area here. I'm looking for a balance between shadowing and detail. Shadowing and detail. See, right here, I've got very dark shadows now, but the detail is coming out a little bit better. If I tweak that up, you see, now my shadows are improved, but my detail starts to get blown out. I'm looking for a good balance between with my diffuse, between shadows and detail. Specular, I'm looking for a good balance in how much light is reflected off of the object at the 90-degree angle. All right, now I'm going to drop all the way down here and work on my gamma a little bit and contrast. Contrast, you see, that's too little of a contrast. It's too dark and too bright. So I want to get a nice compromise. I want to get the best shadows I can, and I want to have the minimum highlight. I don't want the scene blown out. Oops, wrong one. I don't want the scene blown out like that. I don't want it so dark like that. I want to get it somewhere in here where it's got a good contrast, a good balance between the shadows and the highlights. The shadows and the highlights. The best balance you can. You're not ever going to get it perfect, but you want to get a good balance. All right, now, all right, let's end the session now. And when we get back to the next session, I'm going to talk about ambient, and I think we can get to dynamic fog. Now you're going to start to see some very interesting things happen with this Mandelbulb 3D scene. All right, I'll see you in the next session.